Hello, and welcome to the second episode of First Impressions. So, this is a show where my co host Dash Hooper and I evaluate a new album each week with a few simple ground rules. First, must be an album we've never heard before. Second, we're only allowed to play it once. After that, we rate it using a variety of categories. Before we started, both of us picked 10 albums from any time and any genre. The second album we're going to look at today is Stormwatch, the 1979 album by Jethro Tull. So how are you doing today, Dash?
I'm doing excellent. After this fine listen, at least to me. I don't know about anybody else, but this was a fine listen to me.
Yeah, I got notes. Ian Anderson, I got notes. So yeah, we're things to say. I mean, I don't want to, I guess, kind of spoiler alerts. I'm not going to say I dislike the album, but I got notes. So yeah, I guess that's as much as I can say. Is it's far from perfect in my eyes, but there's things I see that could definitely have taken it to another level of I wouldn't say perfection. That this album wouldn't hit that, but another level, like move it a full star up. But we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. So first thing we're going to talk about is a little bit of history about the band. So we will give the quick kind of brief history of Jethro Tull. I don't do deep research. I kind of hit Wikipedia, go around, find out some basics about it. So here's the brief history of Jethro Tull. So Jethro Tull is an iconic British rock band formed in 1967 by songwriter and flautist Ian Anderson. So they formed and they kind of started off as a blues band and more of a rock band. And one of the things they've always been known for, and if you talk about Jethro Tull, one of the things that everyone's going to know is the flute, because you don't normally think of rock music and a flute, but Jethro Tull, that became his signature feature, or their signature feature. Jethro Tull, as I'll say later, is not one of the members of the band. When I was a kid, I thought, which one's Jethro Tull? And I just assumed, all right, the dude playing the flute, that must be Jethro Tull. But Ian Anderson, known for his flute playing, that became the signature of the band. Their early breakthrough album was Stand Up, that came up in 1969. But the album that really solidified them in the rock community was Aqualung, came out in 1971. And this album, it's a conceptually ambitious album. It explored themes of religion, poverty, and society. And again, when you kind of think about Jethro Tull, this is going to be the album you think of. The Aqualung song itself has become kind of an iconic staple on classic rock stations that even when I was a kid, it was a staple on classic rock stations, and it remains so. So throughout the 70s, they continued to evolve. They became more experimental. They released the album Thick as a Brick in 1972, and that's a single 43-minute track, one album, one track that satirizes the concept album genre by also joining it and creating what became an iconic concept album. So they've been around since those years. They're actually still around. If you go on, they're still active. They still do tour, and their popularity did drop in the 80s, but they've also continued to release albums. And one of the things that I remember them from was in 1989, their album Crest of Knave beat out Metallica's And Justice for All for the best hard rock metal performance at the Grammys. So that's kind of my background knowledge that I acquired on the internet for Jethro Tull. So do you have anything else that you want to add about them?
Just one of the big key things is people will always sit there and say, I don't like certain things. These guys that were always, like you talked about, kind of like activists, not, and I don't want to say like straight in your face activists, but a lot of their songs had, like you said in the first one, religion. Well, and especially the one we're going to be talking about is Bates deep in environmentalism and stuff like that. So That's what I like about them. As far as there's actual themes for the
Yeah.
most part to their albums. So
Mhm.
other than that, what I learned on the history today was they had a Christmas album. I didn't even I was telling you about that backstage. I didn't even know they had a Christmas album, which hey, if you
I didn't know. I mean, so many bands have a Christmas album. The Ian Anderson led Jethro Tull Christmas album. I fear it, but I'm kind of intrigued. I need to know more.
Now, yeah.
I have to hunt it down, and I don't know if I'll make it through it. I can't make any promises, but I kind of need to experience it now, at least until I get so sick of it that I turn it off. So
at least
we'll
at least want to say I heard it. At least want to say I heard the Christmas album now. So
yeah. It's like yes, I've heard it. Yes, I've experienced it. Will I revisit it? Let's just say no. But you know what? I might be completely off base. I might hear it, be like, holy shit, this is now my Christmas go-to album. It's a staple of Christmas every year. Bust it out, play it for the family. But yeah, I don't know. I have to find it. But I guess we could do that in a Christmas theme one. Like, all right, we're going to find an obscure Christmas album and go at it. But yeah, I fear it.
Well,
more than anything.
Since we've been doing this, that's all I've been looking for is obscure albums. So
yeah, I have a few coming our way in later weeks. I mean, the first 3 that I picked are, I wouldn't say more mainstream, but bigger than some of the more fully, truly indie ones that are going to be coming up in some later weeks. So yeah. So he says, one of our viewers says it's a good album. Cora says it's a good album. If Cora says that the Jethro Tull Christmas album is good, like I said, I got to give it a shot. It's one of those things where whether it's good or not, I just need to find out. I mean,
thanks, Cora.
One of my favorite things to listen to is the Vandals Christmas album, and you wouldn't think that would be a great Christmas album, but it's so fun and weird that it becomes kind of a staple that I play every year. So, like I said, Jethro Tull could make the mix. Cora could be right. And it's like, you know what? You haters need to go away. This is a Christmas classic. You'll feel festive the moment the needle drops. So we'll see. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about the reviews of the album. So I'll be honest, I had a really hard time finding, actually a little history of the album too. And what I was saying before I interrupted myself was I had a hard time finding original reviews of the album. I was only able to find 4 of them, and they ranged between 2 and 3 stars. Yeah. Some of the reviews were just talking more about that it's an uneven album with some great highs, but just missing the mark on certain things. Some of them criticized it for its overly environmental overtones, something that we'll talk about later on. But some later now, as it's been revisited by people, and it just had a 40th anniversary re-release, and they kind of did a remastering of it. And I haven't heard that version. I bought an original vinyl pressing of it. So that remastering might get people, it might change that feeling of the album, because the mixing was one of the things I would have had some criticism of. So a little bit about the background of the album. It was released in 1979. It was Jethro Tull's 12th studio album. So we're talking later career for a band. I mean, now there's no later career. We have Ian Anderson, who's still going, and he's 77 years old. So this was the end of what they considered a folk trilogy that had nature and socio-political themes. So Songs from the Wood and Heavy Horses were the first 2 albums in what was considered their folk trilogy. And this one was a darker, more reflective tone. Environmental concerns you'll hear it throughout it. It's very much they were looking at global cooling. And that's why you have that Stormwatch and this kind of, I almost think of it like Game of Thrones, like winter is coming. As I listened to this album, I kept thinking, ooh, winter is coming. Winter is coming. So, yeah, it's definitely, you feel that theme in it.
It's funny that you say Game of Thrones, because that was my exact, especially a couple of songs. You're just like, I'm waiting for Eddard Stark to walk through the daggone door. So, it was.
You feel that, yeah, because, I mean, it's just, it's so prevalent through the album, and it has a few songs that kind of break that theme, but overall it's really focused on environmental issues. And it also discusses things because he was living near some of the places that they talk about. So Dunringell, that was near his home, so he could have walked to it from his home. So it's considered one of the band's more somber and introspective works, and it looks at the turbulent times of the 70s, and some things never change. I mean, this album's themes, this album's lyrics could transport into a 2024 album and wouldn't be at all out of place. So that's one of the things. Is it was at the time they looked at it negatively, but as time has moved on, they're thinking, okay, maybe he was onto something. So it is also the last album that featured Tull's classic 70s lineup. So after John Glasscock suffered a heart attack during this album, didn't perform on the full album, and passed away shortly after the album was released. So that ends the original lineup of Jethro Tull. So as this album finished, that was the end, and the lineup now has changed multiple times, where Ian Anderson, kind of like Robert Smith of The Cure when we were talking about that last week, Ian Anderson was really the only steady force in the band. He's the one that stuck around, and if you see them on tour today, most likely he's going to be the only original member you're going to see up there on the stage.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're like you talked about. I'm getting ready to, and I agree with you, Cora. I think he's a brilliant musician. I think he's a wonderful lyricist and musician. So you have no argument from me on that one. But we're going to be talking about one. Yeah, but you said 2024. Some of the songs could fit. Yeah, I'll bring that up here in a little bit.
Yeah. So what we'll talk about now is our background with the band. So what is your background, your prior connection with this band?
So, I when we picked this album, I told you my brother would probably be very upset with me because he listened to a lot of Jethro Tull when we were growing up. He's 15 years older than me, so that's where I got a lot of my I was born in 73, so I got a lot of my classic rock and from the 60s and the 70s from listening to his LPs and that. But I'd never heard this one, and at the time this came out, I was almost 6 years old. So I'm not saying I'm old enough to know, but I still know the songs, and I would probably I know a lot of songs from when I was young anyways. So my background is just listening to Jethro Tull, Aqualung, like we talked about, Brick again, another one we talked about. Those are some of the ones that I grew up listening to with my brother. But that's my background, and I still listen to Jethro Tull to this day. I mean, I just didn't ever have this album because it just, again, you're talking about some of the history, I was looking up how some of the albums are ranked. This ranks like, I think there was 30 to 31 albums that Jethro Tull has put out, and this ranks right about 10 or 11. So it's kind of it's still in the middle for them.
Yeah.
And a funny thing with my background on this is I used to work at a bookstore, and when our new people came in to train them how to to work the store, we put them into the CDs, the albums, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And all the time, and you used to think that Jethro Tull was a member of the band. So I would always go in and have to take T. I would have to take them out of the T section because they're alphabetizing it as Tull.
Yeah, as a last name. It's like, no,
I was like, guys,
there's no member named Tull. I mean, but as a kid, I knew no better either. I thought Jethro Tull, that must be the singer. That's kind of like, Van Halen. Right, you're like, okay, that's Jethro Tull. That's one of those guys that plays in the band. So yeah, for me, I was saying this to my wife. My knowledge of Jethro Tull could just about fill a thimble. I knew a little bit when I was growing up. My dad, he saw them in concert. He was a big fan. And all he would talk about when he would come home from the concert was, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. He will play his flute standing on one leg. And I'm just imagining this
Yeah.
mystical flautist flamingo standing up there doing his thing. And this is one of the pictures that would have been the tours my dad was seeing him on. And yeah, it kind of fits that flautist flamingo thing that I popped up in my head when I was a kid. And that's
awesome.
About the extent of what I knew. I knew Aqualung's album. That would be the one he'd play. I knew Thick as a Brick. And that was about it. And I just thought, when I heard Aqualung, I just thought he's angry, and I like that. It seemed like he had that edge to him, and that was kind of fun to listen to. So now, kind of there he is today, 77, still going strong, out there touring. And yeah, last week we talked about Robert Smith, who's 65, still out there doing his thing. So it's like there's no age limit to putting out good music, to still getting out there and doing your thing. So we're going to move in now to our overall thoughts. So I'm going to let you go first, and then I'll come in and let you know what I thought about it.
Mercy. Oh, okay. Again, I'm a fan of Jethro Tull, so I'm probably going to be a little biased in my overall thoughts. Mm-hmm. But first listen, again, it's another one of those where you just lock yourself away. I've got 2 little girls, so I don't want them to not that they would bug me. You understand what I'm saying? I just want to listen to this. And so I finally got some time to listen to it and go in. And my first initial thoughts is the music was beautiful for a lot of these songs. Opens up with North Sea Oil. So again, the very first song, as we talked about, definitely very environmentalist, and that's all because of, as you spoke about, he lived in all these places, and I had to at least to me it felt like he was probably seeing these things and wanting to write about him. He's, like I said, he's a brilliant lyricist. I wasn't overall thrilled with North Sea Oil as I was a lot of the other songs. If the first thing I would say was I probably would have not put this as the first song, because I could see people shying away. But still a good song, don't get me wrong, but it could shy people away.
And that's you're hitting on one of the things I'll talk about when I give my first impression, and that's the sequencing, the tracking of this album wasn't in its favor. It didn't do it any favors the way that the song orders that they created. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Kind of, even though that's coming up with mine, I agree that's not a solid opener. You want the opener to grab the listener by the throat, so you can't help but want to hear more. And I don't think that song is the one that really pulls you in and makes you think, I have to hear the rest of this album. And they had songs that could have been that one. There were songs that could have been that grab the listener by the throat song, but they didn't start it with that. So
yeah,
absolutely. I'll let you get back to yours, but yeah, I'm with you on that. It was not the best choice as an opener.
But after that one, I mean, I really got into the album. Orion's really good. It starts picking up, and then you hit the there's 10 songs on there. You hit the third and fourth, and then you get to the fourth one, Dark Ages. That's one of the ones where I'm sitting there feeling like I'm waiting for the like I said, the Game of Thrones. I'm waiting for these characters to walk through the door, and it just keeps going, and then you start to feel. And that's where and so then of course you got to flip the LP over and go again. But I feel like it finished strong. I feel like, and that's what overall sells me on this, was right there in the middle. I'm connected now. We talked about with the Cure last week, where we were just literally. I'm glad that we have to give the entire album a listen, because. I feel like if some people don't know who Ian Anderson is or don't know who Jethro Tull is, they would just be like, "Oh, you're gonna lose me." But overall, I felt it. It's one of those really good emotions, and even though it's dark, you can empathize, like, you know, and even the very last song, Elegy, is about that was written about, or even it's just a instrumental, but even the instrument, you know, is composed for somebody that one of the band members that lost a family member.
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I
and
heard
so
that. I read that.
and so I was like, man, but you could just feel it,
Hmm.
and you know, you can, and I felt that was a good closer. So
Yeah.
you know, overall, I really was in the album. And again, probably because I'm biased, and it looks like
Yeah.
Cora's on my side there. You
Okay,
know,
let's
with,
see.
yeah,
Yeah, because I have
oh, she
my
says. So that's my overall thoughts right there.
yeah. Okay. So for me, I felt like in its current form, it was more misses than hits. But I don't think that I think there's a great album hidden in an album that's sequenced in a way that really throws me off.
Right.
So I think the best opener they could have done would to be put Something's on the Move as your opener. That would have been a strong opener. It gives you those same themes of winter is coming, and it's kind of metaphorically a woman, but that could also be a tropical storm that's coming in because they're all given the human names. And I think that album would have been that song as an opener on the album
Yes.
would have been one that truly grabbed you from the start. And I think that you could have put, the opener more in the middle of the album.
Yeah.
And then what I also thought was the Dark Ages. That's, that big almost 10-minute prog rock epic. That's a perfect album closer. You
Yep.
put that on to close the album, and now you have these bookends of strong opener, strong closer, and you keep that engagement as the album goes on. I think that there's 2 instrumental tracks, and
Yeah.
neither one, in my opinion, should be an album closer. One closes side A, one closes side B, and I just think that those sequenced better more in the middle of the side of the album would give them better impact, because I just think closing it with 2 instead of just one. Now, if they had closed it with just the one that was composed for the father that had passed away, that might have been good. But I just think Dark Ages just lends itself beautifully as an album closer, because it just, you start with, winter is coming basically, and then you close it out with this epic 10-minute, opus. And
Yeah.
there you have a perfect way to start and end an album. But I did like the environmental overtones. I mean, the fact that those can still remain timely, even, years after its release, over 40 years after it came out, we can still look at these things and see the impact hasn't gone away, and that, we're still experiencing it in society today. The one thing I wish I could have had is, like I was talking earlier, like when Aqualung, he just had that angry sneer, and he's so angry about what's going on in the environment. I would have loved to hear that sneer kind of pop in as this album was going on. Like, all right, you're angry, you're feeling this, you're upset at the state of the world. Let's hear that edge back in there. But overall, that's what I would say about it, where I kind of land with everything.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And you bring up a good point. I honestly think Dark Ages probably would have been the better closer. And we talked about it backstage too, and I wonder, I kind of lead it or lend it to, what if it was because of, we were just talking about, we're hitting that 79 80s, and we're seeing a lot of these bands transition, and I wonder if that's what happened here, where they transitioned from that. And I don't want to, angry is a good word, determined, strong, powerful is some good words that I would use. And I just wonder, obviously I don't have anything to back this up because there's nothing written in stone, but I just wonder if that lended a little bit to the overall tone of the album, because they are heading into the 80s, because we saw it with Aerosmith a little bit. We saw it with Journey a little bit, how they kind of, all these bands got their starts in the 70s, and they sounded one way in the 70s. Even Styx, there's not a lot of Styx fans out there, but I there were times I'm like, God, that sounds like Styx a little bit in some of the.
Yeah, you can hear that.
I can hear some Styx, and I'm just like, whoa. But overall, again, I agree with you. I think I now that you say it, I think Dark Ages probably would have just really pushed it when we're going to talk about when our final ratings or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll push it a little bit more to me. So good. Yeah, I like that. Good call.
Yeah. I always think when you're writing an album, you want to start strong and you want to end with a bang. And I think that album would have been that end with a bang moment. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the instrumental that closes it, but it just doesn't leave the same impact as you close with a big prog rock epic, that builds and moves, and it just screams, let's close it out. And then you're pulling that needle off. You're just like, wow, I just took a ride right now. Where it is, and I mean, I can go in and I can retrack it and make a Spotify playlist and say, here's my proper tracked version of it. But you can't do that on vinyl. And this album, when it was initially released, the only way you would have been able to experience it would have been on vinyl or cassette. And both of those are stagnant forms. You can't change the track listing because you feel like it. Once CDs came out, by burnable CDs, that became something you could do. You could shuffle it and retrack it. And I did that. Certain albums I bought, I'm like, this just, you know what? Nope. I'm going to retrack it. I'm going to resequence it. I'm going to become the engineer. This would be better if you went this direction. But on vinyl, you're stuck listening to the way that they built it. And I just think on the 40th anniversary, I haven't listened to it, but I wonder, did they restructure it? Because did they realize we could have had stronger impact a different way?
Yeah, I gotta wonder, because I know on another album when they did do it, it was 2014, maybe it was the 30th anniversary or whatever. They did add 4 new tracks.
Okay,
and I don't know if that was to CD. I did see again, like you were researching. I was doing mine. I do know they have another album out there, or the same album but does have 4 bonus tracks.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that's probably on a CD collection. I don't, because I have the first print of I don't have the remastered or anything like that. I have the first print.
Yeah. So. Same. And I've heard good things about the remaster. I've heard that they kind of bring up some of the instruments, get some more strength, and it's something I'd need to seek out. I haven't heard it, and I'm guessing they were probably B-sides that they put in, but did they retrack it when they did that? Something
I don't know.
Something to look for if you do a second revisit on the album.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about standout lyrics. So what are some lyrics that stood out to you on this one?
Let me pull up my notes here on my I'm going to talk about, because Dark Ages, again, just like you said, it was powerful, at least to me, powerful. And this is a lot of foreshadowing. I feel like, not that they were, not that they knew what was going to be like in 2024, but I feel a lot of foreshadowing. And one of this here, the big jet rumbles over runway miles, the scar, the patchwork green, where slick tycoons and rich buffoons have opened up the scene. Like that's getting close to the end of Dark Ages, and I'm just like, wow, that's so much. And I'm not getting political. I'm just talking about, we know what jet airliners are doing. We know what it's doing to the atmosphere and things like that. But I just felt like that, and then on golden nights and champagne flights, ad man overkill. So he's talking about just talking about just things that'll destroy the world. If you know what I'm talking about. The ad man. Excuse me, I lost my voice there. And then it just keeps going, and it's in a haze, consumer crazed. We take the sugar pill. Like it just such great words for Dark Ages. I mean, the whole song was brilliant. And then we have Something's on the Move.
Yeah.
Whew. Just that whole. I mean, I can sit here and quote the whole song, but on Sunshine, oh Sunshine, take me now away from here. I'm a needle on a spiral and a groove, and the turntable spins as the last waltz begins, and the weatherman says something's on the move. Like,
yeah, and that was my standout lyric that I wrote as well. It was, I saw that one. I'm like, okay, that's really good because it kind of it really conveys the hopelessness that he's feeling as he wrote this album. Like, we are trapped and our fate is already sealed and nothing's going to get on it. The needle's been placed on the record and there's no escaping it. So yeah, I grabbed that same lyric as well because that would have been what I picked, and just liked that, like I said, even though that sneer, that angry kind of almost spitting out those lyrics as he does in Aqualung, you can feel the anger still there. And that's where I guess that's just kind of the punk rock kid in me is like, all right, spit that out. Let's hear some venom in this because you are feeling the venom. Let's hear it. But again, like you said, it's kind of that reshaping, and you can't just keep doing Aqualung 2.0 and Aqualung 3.0, or else you get lost in yourself and people are done with you.
But I think this song would have benefited from. It's a great song. Something on the Move is a great song, but I think that would have benefited, especially some of the fierceness, the powerful, that I'm used to from Ian. So I think that would have this song definitely would have benefited. That's just some of the standout ones for me. I mean, I love the Flying Dutchman as well. That's a song to me that's just all about, we if you know anything about the history of the Flying Dutchman, it's lost at sea forever. And I feel like that's kind of what he was feeling. He's just feeling like he's lost and when he's writing this. And death grinning like a scarecrow, Flying Dutchman, seagull pilots flown from nowhere, trying to touch one. I mean, he just feels lost, and he can't control, and if he keeps going that way, he's going to get even further lost.
That hopelessness is seen throughout the album. He just he's looking at, and I did a little research on the Flying Dutchman, and you have the mythology of the Flying Dutchman, but he was also looking at it with the immigrants who were trying to come by ship, and those immigrants would get lost at sea. They would never reach the shores, much like the Flying Dutchman. You can see it. It's an ominous sign, but it will never come to your shores. You say goodbye to the people who are going to get on this Flying Dutchman, which at that time would have been those immigrating over the water, trying to find a better life. At that point, not coming to America, but coming to England. And he just sees them as they're as hopeless as the passengers on the Flying Dutchman. So when I researched a little bit more on those lyrics, he kind of takes the original mythology and merges it with the current events. And that's a lot of what's going on this album, is he's looking at the current events and he's none too pleased about any of them. And like I said, that's just where I miss that venom coming from him, because he's feeling it. That. I mean, you can tell by the way he's talking about all these things that he's feeling those emotions, but it's a softer singing of those emotions than we would have got in, the early 70s albums that they put out.
Agreed. That's all I got for my lyrics.
Yeah. You took mine. I wrote a couple down, but you got them both. We're both on the same page with those ones, and that's okay, because you go first. You get the good grab of the lyrics. There were some good ones, and you definitely shared those. So what would you call your best track for this one?
Dark Ages. The best track is Dark Ages to me. Again, because it's powerful, and the instrumentals and the solos and it just, you feel it. I know we sitting here talking about we want to hear some more of his voice, but I think in this song with the instruments, you really feel it. You really feel the despair and what this whole album is about. Even though in what was it, I think it was in Dun Ring Hill, where they're talking about the Stormwatch of the title of the album. I think it was Dun Ring Hill. But with Dark Ages, I think you're really feeling the entire tone of what this album is all about. So to me, that was the best track, followed by Something's on the Move. I think those two were the standout best tracks.
And that's where I came with. Mine definitely would have been Something's on the Move. I just like the kind of multi-meaning, ominous force that's rising that he's singing about. And as I said earlier, we could be talking a tropical storm that's going to wipe out a city. It's going to wipe out a seaboard town, or it's a dark woman. It's actually, we can take it as this mystical force that's rising. And again, winter is coming. It just, I keep hearing it. I keep feeling it. And I just keep thinking, you messed up. Put this thing at the opening track and hook us right away. So I think I feel frustration about whoever the producer was that tracked it, because they just, like you said, neither one of us think that the opener was a strong way to get people hooked on this album. And for a lot of people, you're not going to go deep into the album if you're not hooked right away. And the same is true of a book. Doesn't matter what the art form is, you've got to get them early if you want to keep them around.
That's why, you talk about it. That's why the opening line of every book has to be strong.
Yeah,
you want to grab that first sentence, has to grab the reader. And same with an LP or CD or cassette or 8-track, whatever you're listening to. That first song has to grab. You're absolutely right.
That's the key more than anything, is just get them hooked early, and then you'll keep them the whole way. So yeah, what would be your skip track? Is there one that you would skip on this album?
Yeah, again, it's going to be which is funny, you and I agree on this. It is going to be North Sea Oil, and I would skip it, because if I probably wouldn't, and I say this in hindsight, obviously, I probably wouldn't skip it if it was in the middle of the album. But with that being said, if I wasn't a Jethro Tull fan, and I heard this, and this was the first time I heard it like this is, I might have just turned it off. I would have been like, this is, and I hate to say that, because again, Ian is a great songwriter and a great lyricist and a great composer, and just something felt off with this one. And and I'd probably skip Home. It's a good song, but it's not a horrible song, but it just didn't, to me, and anybody can disagree with me if you want, it just didn't feel it, for lack of a better term, it didn't feel at home on this album. And as the way the other ones did.
I feel that. I mean, as an opener, the opener being a skipper is like the greatest crime an album can commit. And I found the same thing with the closer on side A. I thought Warm Sporan, as a closer of the side, it was just, it didn't give anything to closing it out. That's another one. If I were playing the album, and I imagine, okay, it's the 70s, my dad bought the album, I imagine him picking the needle off the record and flipping it to side B when that song comes on. Placed in the middle of the side, it doesn't become a skipper. I mean, placement is everything when it comes to a great album. And if you end it with a way that's easy, I mean, even in the vinyl era, pick that needle up and you're done with it. That's what I would do. And even now, I would just grab it off. Like, all right, I want to get to side B. That's where the good stuff's hiding. I just got through this amazing 9-minute epic. This is too much of a come down. I'm taking this one off. And it's one that ends up being a skipper, even though it's not that it's a terrible song. It's just terribly placed and too convenient to move on to the next one.
Agreed.
All right. So now we come down to our final assessment of this album. Are we revisiting this one, or are we sending it off to the used bin?
Nostalgia and my love for Jethro Tull is the only reason I'm going to revisit this one. But
Mhm.
I will probably, I'll kick it off on the first song, walk away for a minute, but know when to come back, and then listen.
Yeah.
I gave it 4 stars. If we're,
Mhm.
I give it 4 stars. And you're right. You saw some reviews. The ones that I saw, they were kind of in between 2 and 3 stars.
Yeah.
It gets a 4-star probably because, again, the nostalgia factor of me
Mhm.
loving Jethro Tull.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, if this is a 2-sided coin here. If I was not a Jethro Tull fan, this would probably been a one-time listen for me. With the exception of Dark Ages and Some Things on the Move, I would find singles or something of that nature. But and I know that's probably against the rules.
Yeah. Oh no, I mean we make the rules. There's nothing against the rules. I mean, because the thing is, will you play it again, or is it gonna, just you're gonna file it under the J's, not the T's, and never pull it out? That's what it kind of comes down to. And for me, in its current form, now I'd love to play around with it and retrack it to the way that I think it deserves to be tracked. But in its current state, I will be like trying to dance the needle around to drop it on the 2 tracks that really grabbed me, and the rest of it I wouldn't really be revisiting. And I'm actually going to play around with it. I'm going to do a Spotify reshuffle of this song. And what I'm going to do is I'm building right now a Spotify playlist. I put our favorite songs from the Cure album, and I'm going to put our favorites from this one. And then just for the heck of it, I'm going to retrack it in the way that I think would be more impactful. I'm going to see, is it a better album when it's retracked? It's certainly, if I'm on Spotify, there's still going to be some times I hit that skip button because it's nice and easy to do it through Spotify. Not as easy when you're playing the record. But for me, it's just kind of, it's a reluctant put it in the used bin, but I have to think, okay, with all of the albums that I own, the vast record collection, how often will I reach for this particular Jethro Tull album?
Right.
If I'm reaching for Jethro Tull, most likely my hands are going right to Aqualung, right to Thick as a Brick. And this one would be the one, like you said, I'm going to play those 2 tracks because I definitely loved those 2 tracks. But aside from those, I don't think I'm playing the album in its entirety again.
Yeah. Definitely feel that. I feel that. I feel it. Yeah. It's just that's enough, I think, to make anybody probably put it in the used bin if you have to continuously move the needle around, and that's not what you want to do with an album. But for nostalgia's sake, I will probably listen. And now it won't be one that I go to immediately. Like you said, it's gonna, Aqualung, Brick, Thick as a Brick. Those are the ones that I'm going to play on and on and on.
Yeah.
Until I find this Christmas album, obviously, and then
that's the new quest. All right, the Jethro Tull Christmas album, and will I make it through it? That's the question.
Yeah, that's the question.
Because I have little patience for so many Christmas albums. This is nothing against Jethro Tull, but
right.
I mean, and I can't imagine him trying to sing like saccharine and sweet and I need to find it, but do I want to find it?
I feel it's probably very earthy, very earth
I think
tone.
So.
Very,
Probably.
Very, which is okay, but I'm glad I picked it though. I'm glad I picked this one.
Yeah,
just for the fact that I could actually say now I've heard almost all of their albums.
And that is the fun thing is we're picking ones because obviously we can't pick Aqualung. We've heard it, we know it. It's something that we've already ingrained with ourselves. So we're picking one that we normally wouldn't visit. And I can honestly say I would not have grabbed this album. I wouldn't have gone into Spotify and picked songs because if you don't know what you're looking for. But now I have a few of songs from this album that are saved in my like songs of Spotify that I would have never heard otherwise. And that's the fun of picking albums that we've never listened to, that we probably wouldn't have listened to otherwise. And we may not discover great albums. I mean, last week we picked The Cure, but that's not because that album's been sitting around for 40 years waiting for a listen. It was just released. And the best chance of finding an album that's going to, you know, blow our minds is going to be with those ones that they just came out. And that's their best chance. If they've been out for 40 years and we haven't found them, well, we may discover, because we have another album that's been out many years that's going to be played during this sequence too. And that's a Stevie Wonder album that's by all regards considered one of the greatest albums of all time. And somehow neither one of us have heard it. So maybe we will discover a new favorite album. And that's the hopes, you know, that we can discover a new favorite album, or at least visit some stuff that we wouldn't visit otherwise. And that's kind of the fun of doing this, sitting down with an album that you have no previous knowledge of, you have no history with it, and just letting it unfold.
Yeah, that's why I like doing all those tournaments, or asking people throw your favorite album out, because again, there was times there was people throwing albums out that I was like, what?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's why I like doing that. It's so fun to hear what people listen to and find what they appreciate. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, I did a playlist for one of my marathons where I said, hey, here's an open playlist, add some songs that'll be good for running. And it was none of my songs, and it was a lot of fun because I didn't know what was coming. And as you're going through miles 18 through 26, like those are the worst miles that you can run. It's good to have some surprises come your way, and you're like, oh, good. Something to get my mind off the fact that I'm running up a hill right now on mile 21. So anything to clear the mind.
22. You can ask Lorena, my wife. She ran the half and I ran the full. And I told her, I was like, at 22, I was ready I was ready to cry. I was ready to cry at mile 22. So yes,
they get rough. I always say like mile 18 to 20, usually like 18 to 24 feel like death. And then 25 and 26, you're close. If you're in LA, you can smell the bacon wrap hot dogs that are being grilled. And you're like, all right, I smell those and I may die, but I'm going to eat two of those fuckers when I get done with this thing. Because damn it, I'm hungry. And it's like that's the LA smell. You're like, yes, I'm getting close to the finish line because all the hot dog guys are out there.
We get big old burgers and
nice.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, as soon as you coming down Classen Boulevard, you can start hearing. You're smelling because where we're at in Oklahoma City, where they hold it. As soon as we hit Classen, you're just like, oh, home stretch. But Classen is so long.
Oh yeah,
I should say it feels so long. It feels so long.
There's those stretches, and I know what you're talking about. Every marathon has those brutal stretches that you question your life's choices as you're finishing it up. So that's when it's fun. Like, okay, here's a song I would have never played, and holy crap, it's actually good. And my mind's only thinking about this song, not this hill, not those hot dogs that I still have to run 2 miles to get. So yeah, it's a fun thing to do. So next week we are going to bring out a brand new album, and this one is going to be the new album by Soccer Mommy, and we'll be checking it out. I've played it once. I will give no opinions on what I have to say, but I played it once. I've taken my notes, and Dash's turn to listen to it. So next week, we'll take a look at this album that will make people start to think that I only like sad and depressing music. But I promise you, I don't only listen to sad and depressing music, just primarily.
Yeah, no, I think we pick up coming up here in a few weeks. I think we pick up and get the beat up a little bit. But I'm looking forward to this one. I'm looking very, very forward to this one. I have never heard any Soccer Mommy, so this will be a brand new
Evergreen by Soccer Mommy. Next week, tune in, same place, same time, on YouTube, on Facebook. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this. Let us know. Did we get this right? Drop that in the comments. Did we get it completely wrong? Am I being too harsh on this album? Let us know. Drop a comment. Let us know what you think of this album as well. And if you've heard the Soccer Mommy album, what are your thoughts on that one? Let us know what you think, and we'll see you guys next week.
All right. See ya. Excellent.